You are listening to the Monday Night War Review, where frankincense, big business, and big techs chronologically review the Monday Night Wars from 1995 to 2001 between WCW Nitro and WWF Monday Night Raw. Join us for this roller coaster ride of nostalgia and hilarity.
It's my life in the box in front of me. Taking talk in my arms is the soul of me. You walk by, ask to see me lay face down.
Welcome to the Monday Night War Review, although today we are not reviewing Raw and Nitro as usual. We are doing our first pay-per-view review for In Your House 4 on October 22nd, 1995 from the Winnipeg Arena in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. This was the fourth In Your House in the series of these pay-per-views, and it was the first pay-per-view to take place in Canada since WrestleMania 6 in 1990. It had a 0.4 buy rate, and it had an attendance of 10,339 fans. We had Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary, and for the first time since we started doing this show, we also had Jim Ross on commentary. So actually, you know, I was saying before we started that I was trying to find silver linings or positives of this pay-per-view, and I guess having Jim Ross on commentary was one of them.
I loved hearing his voice. Do you remember how much like the In Your House would have cost on pay-per-view back in the day?
They were cheaper than like a Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. And I think those were right around like what, $30-$40 back in the day.
They should be cheaper. This was I gotta say this wasn't the greatest pay-per-view I've ever watched, that's for sure. We start with Tony Wilson singing the Canadian national anthem, and I have no idea who she is, even though they said she was an up-and-coming international singing sensation. I thought she did fine. I gotta say, the American national anthem is a lot better.
Ooh.
I mean, it's true, though. Like, it's true. Like, I'm not even trying to be nationalistic. I just think it's true. Like,
objectively.
I have no problem with Canada. I like Canada, but anyway. So then we get this announcement from Gorilla Monsoon that we are going to not have Shawn Michaels in competition tonight due to his concussion. And so Shawn Michaels will publicly forfeit the Intercontinental Championship and present it to Dean Douglas. But Monsoon also says that Dean Douglas will have to defend the title against Razor Ramon. He says it was one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my entire career. I was like, I don't know about that.
I thought he said it was the most difficult decision. He talked about the rights and privileges thereof of the Intercontinental Championship. And I would just like to know, what are the rights and privileges associated with the Intercontinental?
I mean, it represents, the IC belt always represented like, you know, kind of the workers belt, and the world belt was always just the top guy. But like the IC belt always represented the guys in the locker room more so.
Yeah, but in kayfabe, like, what would the rights and privileges? I guess on one level, like, I guess it could mean that you can't lose it on a disqualification or a count out. And I think the official kayfabe rule is that you have to defend it like every 30 days. I think that's with all the belts. I think you have to defend it once every 30 days. But it's also kind of funny to say that because he didn't really have rights and privileges, considering that he was forced to defend it right away. You know, so it's almost like that was kind of contradictory. It's like he has all the rights and privileges of the IC belt, but he has to defend it right away. No choice. No choice at all. Yeah. And like before we started, Tex was saying that it's like, how bad is it that on one pay-per-view that's only like an hour and 50 minutes long, you have to have Razor Ramon do 2 matches, you know?
Yeah, that is...
Yeah. You know, last time we did an episode, we were talking about like who was going to win the 20-man battle royal on Raw. And I had predicted Razor, but like as we saw, it's not going to be Razor. And so I think Tex might be right when he said it's going to be Goldust. Because I'm pretty sure like Goldust and Ramon have like a feud pretty soon. Maybe Goldust will be the one who wins the 20-man battle royal and gets the Intercontinental title shot. All right, so after Monsoon's announcement, we get this little quick clip of a bunch of like fanfare in Winnipeg outside the stadium. It was kind of cheesy. Then we have our opening match, which is Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Fatu. They show a little clip of Hunter Hearst Helmsley spraying Fatu with his perfume bottle last weekend, which they call an atomizer. I guess that's the official name of the perfume bottle. So we have a little bit of a build to this match. They at least tried to do a little bit of a build. Before I get into the choreography and stuff, what did you guys think of Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Make a Difference Fatu?
Yeah, I didn't understand the whole make a difference. And then I actually thought the way the match was going, they were going to let Fatu win. I guess at this point, Hunter's still on his win streak. So I thought it seemed like they were kind of building Fatu up. And so I thought they might put him over Mr. Helmsley. But I didn't. The match was fine. I enjoyed some of the commentary. I liked it when the King said something to JR about there wouldn't be any culture in Oklahoma if it weren't for bowling. I'm curious to see who Hunter ends up losing to for the first time.
I have a guess on that. I don't know if I should really do it. It might be more of a spoiler.
I'm curious how long it goes on for, but
if it goes on to WrestleMania of '96, then I think I know who it is.
Gotcha.
Well, he's definitely going to go through a feud with Henry Godwinn. And that, we actually saw a little bit of that at the end of the match. Yeah. And I know that him and Godwinn have like a pigsty match or something where there's literally like a fence and a bunch of mud, and like to win the match, you have to like throw the guy over the fence into like the mud pit or something. I think it was a pigsty match or something like that. And I think that Helmsley loses that match, but I don't know if that's like when he first loses or, anyway. But yeah, Tex, what did you think of Fatu and Helmsley?
Well, I mean, the match itself, as far as the work is concerned, is fine. It's just Fatu just seems like a really good worker who has no gimmick, and they just saddled him with this make a difference thing. He has Just Say No on his tights and all that, and he's like an after-school special, but I kind of just expected Hunter to go over the whole time. Fatu was really selling for him. He was working his butt off too, but it was decent. I gave it about 2 stars. I just, it wasn't much. It's hard for me to get behind Fatu.
Yeah, I mean, on one level, this was one of the more solid matches of the entire evening, in terms of just the working. There are a couple interesting spots, like Fatu gets his neck caught in the hangman position at one point, which is always kind of a little scary. Fatu gets a thrust kick in. He also kind of hits like a running diamond cutter, which I guess is also called an ace crusher. And I thought that was kind of a cool move. Helmsley avoids Fatu's big flying splash and wins with the pedigree. One thing that I thought was confusing in kayfabe is that Fatu always no-sells shots to the head. Like, because he's Samoan, and that's just what they do. And, like, so if you headbutt him or punch him or hit his head on the turnbuckle, he even no-sells a DDT. And so I was like, okay, well, then why does the pedigree hurt him so much? Because because they even say, oh, he dropped him right on his head or his face, and it's like, well, yeah, but so did the DDT that he no-sold. And so I just thought that was kind of funny, like interesting wrestling logic that he no-sells every shot to the head, but then the pedigree just crushes him. After the match, I thought it was kind of funny. I don't know if Hunter Hearst Helmsley had totally worked out the gimmick yet, because he was like kind of talking in a British accent, even though he's supposed to be from Connecticut. Thought that was kind of a little weird. And, as we said before, Henry Godwinn comes out and threatens to use the slot bucket on Helmsley, but Helmsley pulls Jerry Lawler in the way, and then Helmsley escapes up the ramp. So we're clearly building up to the pig farmer and Helmsley in a feud here, which makes sense, in terms of their gimmicks. So then after the opening match, there's a quick promo of Cornette and the British Bulldog backstage. Not much really to it other than Bulldog saying, "In your house." I like how he said "in your house" in his British accent.
And the 50 below hellhole.
Yeah, he loves calling Winnipeg a hellhole. He's done that multiple times. But yeah, there wasn't much to it other than, we're gonna beat Diesel and Bulldog's gonna be the champ, and nothing too special. Then we get a WWF Tag Team title match between the Smoking Guns and Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid. This is all kind of playing off of all the kind of foreshadowing and hinting they've been doing about the 1-2-3 Kid turning heel. There's been a lot of like tension between him and Razor, and the Kid has been doing all of this kind of sort of angsty, pouty, kind of immature stuff.
The 1-2-3 Kid, what a bad gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it's turned into. He was, I guess, I don't know, the Karate Kid, and now he has to be kind of like whiny and annoyed with Razor and to get his, time in the sun. But then it's weird because they already kind of went through that storyline, and then they made up, and now they're back together, and now it's, again, like, is it going to go this same route?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tough because he is an awesome worker, I think. I like Sean Waltman's work a lot, but it is a little tough, especially when your boss is Vince McMahon, who has this penchant for, like, huge, jacked guys. It's a little tough, like, with what exactly to do with a guy like Sean Waltman in terms of, like, his gimmick and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think something with, like, karate would have actually, like, maybe made a little sense considering all the kind of karate gesticulations he does in the ring.
Which, I think at one of the old In Your Houses, because I think I might have watched In Your House 3 as well. I think he like wore a kimono or something. And so there was like something there. It's just, that's a rough spot to be in. Because where does your character go? Like, does he turn to the 1-2, at some point? Or is he always just going to be, I don't know, this loser kid who hangs out with Razor Ramon?
I actually think his heel turn was a good move, because other than being like the underdog babyface, you can only like be the underdog babyface for so long. And I think his heel turn, where he kind of was in cahoots with Ted DiBiase, I actually thought that was kind of nice. But then after that, you're right. Like, what do you do? And eventually he'll find his little niche with the Generation X, and he'll become X-Pac, which, you can argue about that gimmick too. But, I think obviously that was big for him. DX was huge, and he got into the Hall of Fame as a member of DX rather than as himself. So that was probably the biggest thing that ever happened in his career was DX, So anyway, they're teasing for the 1-2-3 Kid heel turn. We get a little promo backstage before the match where Razor and the Kid are in matching outfits. I always love when Razor calls McMahon McMang. It's one of my favorite things. And they say that they had some tension, but now they've patched things up. The announcers tease the fact that Razor will have the opportunity to win 2 titles tonight. Jim Ross plugs the Superstar Hotline, where your fans can talk to the winners and losers after the match. And he also says that they'll have a chance to have a conversation with Bret Hart after the show. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of choreography in the match. Most of it hinges around teasing the 1-2-3 Kid heel turn, basically. I did like how Jim Ross brought up the Smoking Guns rodeo scholarship in college. I thought that was always funny when he brings that up. We get Dean Douglas taking notes halfway through the match on Razor for when he's going to face Razor later. Thought it was kind of interesting that it's technically like a face versus face match, and I thought the fans seemed actually more behind Razor and the Kid than the Smoking Guns. And I guess Razor and the Kid would have been kind of a cool tag team, That's just, again, is showing the dearth of tag teams they have. Like, your pay-per-view tag team title match again, it's like, where are the actual teams? You know, you have like Yoko and Owen and like Razor and the Kid, and then like it's like, where are the real teams, man? You know, what did you guys think of this tag match overall?
I mean, it ended the only way I thought it could. Razor set it up for the win, and then something stupid happened, and then him and the 1-2-3 Kid lost, which is exactly what happened. The whole setup where it's like, oh, I'm gonna finish off the guns and then tag you in for the pin, like that was kind of. I mean, I guess I'm okay with it, but it was also kind of silly, and I felt bad for Razor that he had to be in there.
Yeah, so what Business is referring to is, you know, Razor hits the Razor's Edge on Billy Gunn at the end of the match, and then 1-2-3 Kid demands that Razor tag him in so that he can, you know, get the pinfall, and then Billy turns the Kid's pinfall into a quick little like crucifix roll up, and the Kid gets pinned. And Tex, what did you think of the work and the way the match played out?
I like the work. I mean, I thought 1-2-3 Kid, he did a lot of good work in this match. You know, his patented, you know, his spinning wheel kicks look pretty good. You know, it's just, you kind of knew what was going to happen with the finish once he was so eager to get tagged in to make the pin. You just kind of feeling that some twist was going to happen to where he was going to cough it up for him. But I thought the match was good overall. You know, kind of, I could only really see the Smoking Guns winning it, because if Razor was going to win the tag titles and then go on and fight for the Intercontinental title later on in this pay-per-view, I found that to be kind of clunky. So
yeah, like it would have been kind of cool if Razor had won both of the belts. That would have kind of made the pay-per-view have more of a impact and kind of be a little more like memorable. But I'm pretty sure that recently they had Diesel as both like the world champ and the tag champ at the same time. I think that happened kind of recently, and so maybe they didn't want to like do that again. But yeah, like in the match, the 1-2-3 Kid like pulls down the ropes so that Bart Gunn like falls out of the ring, which is like a really like heel thing to do behind the ref's back. And then even more so, after he looks like an idiot and costs them the match, he gets all pissed off and starts attacking the Smoking Guns after the match, starts beating them up with kicks, and he even tries to like take the tag titles, like steal them. And so Razor runs in and kind of runs in to like defend the 1-2-3 Kid because he's about to get like beat up by the Guns. But then Razor also takes the belts from the Kid and like gives them back to the Guns and tries to like make peace and stuff. So it was fine. I think at least it served the storyline purposes, and, you know, I'm fine with the Smoking Guns keeping the belts too. So, you know, one of the funnier things that happens in the evening is Doc Hendricks is backstage trying to sell us these life-size cutouts of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. One of the cutouts is $25, but you also get a WWF Classic video. Doc is always throwing in the classic video. He's always throwing in the classic video. And, you know, it was funny how he was trying to sell these cutouts, because he was like, ladies, can you imagine having the Heartbreak Kid in your house 24/7? And then he's like, kids, can you imagine having Bret Hart in your room watching you as you sleep? And I was like, that
was pretty good.
I was like, I get what he was trying to do, but that's some creepy ass shit. God, I felt bad for Bret. Like, yeah, the ladies would all want the Shawn Michaels one, and only the kids would want a Bret Hart one, and like, you know, Shawn's cardboard cutout is going to be, you know, fantasy land for the women, but Bret is apparently a pedophile who watches kids.
Which, in fairness, I have to imagine this was kind of like maybe a joke backstage, like, you know, having a little fun with it.
Maybe. I think it also might have just been like a more innocent time where they weren't worried about how that would be interpreted. And then Doc tries to interview the cardboard Bret Hart, and then when the cutout doesn't respond, he says, I guess he's feeling a little stiff, and then laughs to himself. I was like, that was corny as hell, man. Um, Jerry the King Lawler says he wants to buy a bunch of Bret Hart cutouts so that he can slam and drop kick them around. And he's really salty that Bret will be in the commentary booth later that evening. So Business was highly anticipating our next match, which is Goldust and Marty Jannetty. So what did you guys think of the Goldust debut?
It was my favorite part of the pay-per-view. I thought the match maybe went on a little too long, but I mean, generally I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing the Goldust, the fights he has with different wrestlers. I know eventually he's going to get to Undertaker. I'm trying to remember who he does first, but kind of as an adult now, looking back at Goldust, I have a much deeper appreciation for him. And I'm kind of thinking he ups the like homoeroticism to like make the tough guy wrestlers feel uncomfortable, which I think is going to be like fun to watch and see like fans react to. I kind of thought it would have been funny if he did that with Marty Jannetty, who just seems like such a, I don't know, a bland character. And with respect to Jannetty, I mean, he seems like I don't know why he's even there. I don't know what he's like trying to do. And they also referenced his like personal demons that he had been dealing with. Do you guys know anything about that?
You know, we talked a little bit about that a few episodes ago because Jannetty had like come back, and we actually used him as like jobber watch one week because we didn't really have like a jobber. And yeah, I mean, apparently it's like he just had a lot of like drug and like alcohol problems basically, and he'd be kind of like unreliable for the company. You know, yeah, and I mean, basically after the Rockers broke up, things just were kind of bad for Marty for pretty much the rest of his career. Like, I mean, it's like I would say the Rockers are like the quintessential example of like a tag team breaking up and one guy rising to stardom and one guy falling in the depths, the pits. I mean, it's like,
did Jannetty win the Intercontinental before or after that breakup?
After. It was actually against Shawn Michaels.
Oh shit! Okay.
But he only held the belt for like a week or something. Like, it was actually a pretty famous episode of Raw where he had this kind of upset victory over Shawn for the IC title, and the fans went nuts. And it was cool to have like Marty win the belt, but then he didn't hold on to it for very long. But he did win the tag titles with 1-2-3 Kid at one point. I loved when Jannetty and Kid were a tag team. They would face against like Bam Bam and Tatanka, and like I loved those tag matches, man, because it was just so awesome to have Jannetty and the Kid as this like underdog team who looked like they didn't stand any chance, and they're both awesome workers. So I wish the Kid and Jannetty would have stayed a tag team. I thought they were great. Yeah, Tex, what did you think of Goldust and Jannetty?
So I thought Jannetty, for him to be unreliable and everything, he's typically pretty good in the ring, and I thought he was a really good opponent for Goldust in his debut. I thought he was selling his butt off for Goldust. He was making him really look good out there. You know, we saw a nice Hurricane Rana from Marty Jannetty, and you know, when Goldust hit him with that huge clothesline, he did like the whole tilt-a-whirl inside-out selling job for it. It was really cool looking. Really looked like he took his head off there. He had a snapmare. One move I hadn't seen. He did like a snapmare from the apron to Goldust to the for over the top rope to the outside. I thought that was kind of cool. And you know, we got a rocker dropper from him as well. So, you know, I thought it was a solid match. I guess Goldust didn't have the curtain call yet as a finisher. I think he just finished him with the with that reverse facebuster suplex or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it was a pretty solid match. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked the Goldust promo before the match started. He said that everyone needs to get ready for the Hollywood premiere, and then he did this thing where he's like, lights, camera, so much action, and it was I thought it was awesome. I thought that part was awesome. And then he did this line from the movie Sunset Boulevard where he said, "Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close up." And he was just being, his usual weird self. Business is right that like the whole Hollywood aspect of his gimmick starts to fade away and the androgynous homoerotic aspect of his gimmick starts to take precedent, or starts to take priority. And the Hollywood stuff just kind of eventually dissolves, although he does have like Marlena eventually coming to the ring with him, and she sits in like the director's chair, and so there's still a little bit of the Hollywood thing going on, but he didn't keep repeating these movie lines and stuff forever. Like that like eventually stopped.
Do you know who came up with the Gold Dust character?
Vince.
Oh, Vince came up with it. Okay.
Yeah, or at least Vince and his cronies, because there's actually a funny story where Dustin Rhodes was told by Vince like what the character was going to be, and Vince described it as being androgynous, and Dustin didn't know what that word meant. And so he was just kind of like listening and like nodding and going along with it, and then he said that later he went and like looked up what androgynous meant and had a obviously a big epiphany, like, oh, okay, that which I thought that was like a funny story. He really did a great job with it, and
No, which is what I was gonna say. He does it really well. I almost felt like he might have come up with it himself, but
no, he's awesome, man. Like, I think he's super underrated, and it's amazing that he's still wrestling right now in AEW, and like he's like 50 and he has these like great matches still. So good for him, man. There was this one funny part during the match where Jerry the King Lawler says that Bela Lugosi is in the audience, which must be a Hollywood thing where they're trying to say like, oh, Goldust is friends with all these big Hollywood names, even though Bela Lugosi has passed away at this point. And then they do show this weird like Dracula look-alike guy in the audience, who I guess is supposed to be Bela Lugosi.
that was weird.
That whole thing was weird, man. Yeah,
And I think at one point he has like a Burger King crown on. I don't know who gave it to him, but I mean, yeah, it was strange. I thought it might have been a Creature of the Night, but then the whole Bela Lugosi thing happened.
Yeah, that was funny. So yeah, like Marty hits the rocker dropper, but then he misses his fist drop from the top rope. And then, yeah, we don't get a curtain call. We just sort of get this front suplex thing that Goldust uses to win. We do have Jerry Lawler saying that he shattered Marty Jannetty's dreams. So we did get the shattered dreams thing going, but no curtain call yet. They tell us that Goldust has requested special lighting after his matches as part of his contract, which I thought was funny. But yeah, we're going to get more Goldust. We're going to get a lot more Goldust. He's going to have a feud with Razor Ramon that's very memorable. And I'm kind of thinking he might be the guy who wins the Battle Royal tomorrow night on the next Raw. And he might already get his push to face Razor. We'll see. Next, we have the Yokozuna King Mabel match. And it starts with a recap of Undertaker's injury. And they explain that Gorilla Monsoon made these guys fight each other because they were the two guys who had teamed up to take out Taker, so Monsoon is punishing them by forcing them to fight each other. Yoko comes down with Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji, and of course we have Sir Mo accompanying King Mabel. I always felt really bad for the guys who have to carry Mabel out to the ring. There's always like 5 or 6 guys who like carry him out. That must be heavy.
Yeah, they needed to like make that litter like a bit more stable. That looked tough.
Yeah, because you're not only carrying Mabel's huge body, but a chair and a big wooden platform. Yeah, like, so those poor guys. Backstage, Cornette is really salty about Monsoon's decision. He calls him Gorilla Baboon, and he says that this match was set up to save the WWF from total destruction. Because I guess if Yoko and Mabel could do whatever they want, the WWF would be in disarray. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't like the finish of the match, but I'd say the work in the ring was better than I thought it would be. There was this one like botched bulldog attempt where like Mabel tries to bulldog Yoko and Yoko just doesn't move. And so Mabel just kind of falls and kind of bulldogs nothing. and then Yoko is just all dazed and like falls out to the outside. There's also this one part where Yoko's in the corner and Mabel's gonna like splash him in the corner, and like Yoko can see it coming from like all the way across the ring, and he just still doesn't move. like, like there was some funny stuff. Like Yoko's Yokozuna fell on top of Jim Cornette on the outside. I thought that was kind of funny. Although they didn't really set it up very well. It sort of seemed like Yoko just totally fell on his own volition, you know. But yeah, I mean, what did you guys think of this match?
To your point, as far as like two big guys working together, I thought it went fine. I didn't like the finish. It was what, double count out, and then a weird like 2 minutes of them in the ring trying to intimidate each other, and then they hug it out. Which I guess it's good that they both like remain heels, but I don't know. I didn't really care for like, I would have preferred a cleaner finish and a winner.
Yeah, as expected. I mean, this was kind of not even kind of a sloppy match. This was a really sloppy match with plenty of rest spots built in there. Because it seemed like Yoko, every time he was consulting with Mr. Fuji in the corner, he was just taking like an extended rest break, and he'd be outside of the ring, kind of resting on the side of the apron, and you could tell he was getting winded in there pretty quick. I thought the King had a decent joke in there where he said Yoko is so big he uses a VCR as a beeper.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how that works, but that was kind of interesting. And then like the botched bulldog off the ropes, that made me like laugh out loud. I was losing it after that one. But yeah, of course the finish, wasn't very clean. It was a double count out. It was the kind of finish you'd see on like a Raw episode or something like that. So, of course, with a match with these two guys, and they really didn't want to wrestle each other anyway, I guess a double count out finish makes sense, even if it's kind of lame.
I would have preferred some kind of interference so that like we still got a winner, but it didn't necessarily have to be like a clean win or something. Yeah, the fans kind of booed the shit out of this finish. Like as soon as they realized it was a double count out, they were like, this is so weak. There was this one time where Mabel was running the ropes. He actually ran like both ropes and then threw a jumping clothesline, and that was probably like the most impressive work that I saw. For being as large as he was, Mabel, maybe he was a little dangerous sometimes. He did kind of hurt people a few times, but I mean, he was still pretty impressive in the ring, and for considering how huge he was. So yeah, we get a double count out, and then the two heels like make up in the ring and hug each other, and then the fans boo even more. Then we get a Survivor Series promo, which teases the return of The Undertaker, and also promises us that Bret Hart will face the winner of the Diesel Bulldog match. And Survivor Series will be presented by Milton Bradley Karate Fighters, which is certainly a blast from the past to hear Karate Fighters. I'm pretty sure the WWF actually has a Karate Fighters tournament with their wrestlers. Yep. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to catch wind of that or not, but I do remember that. They also announced that the Survivor Series is going to have a wild card match, and they don't use the terms faces and heels, but they basically tell us that for the wild card match, we're going to have faces and heels on the same teams. It's another one of these like Gorilla Monsoon fan service things that I just don't really think is actually fan service. Like, I think like, unless the wild card match, if it actually has people who are feuding with each other on the same teams, then like, that's fine. Then that can do something for the storylines and stuff. But if it's literally just mashing faces and heels together, like, that's stupid. That's going to make people care less about the match. They told us that we're going to find out more about the wild card match on Raw, it sounded like. Then we get the segment where Shawn Michaels forfeits his title to Dean Douglas. So they play Dean's music. He comes out with a big shit-eating grin on his face, all excited that he's going to get the belt. Then they play Shawn's music, and Shawn comes out in street clothes, and they're kind of funny street clothes. He's got this like very 90s looking leather jacket on that's all very like colorful, And he does kind of look like shit. Last time we did an episode, I was saying that I didn't remember him really looking all that beat up. But he was more beat up here than I remembered. You know, he kind of had a swollen face, and he sort of had remnants of black eyes. And one of his eyes was all, like, bloodshot, too. So he did look like he had been kind of in a fight. So he also really milked the whole thing. Like, he looked, like, so sad. And he took, like, so long to, like, walk across the ring and hand over the belt. And he was, like, you know, looking at it like he was giving up his firstborn child or something. Like, it was maybe a little melodramatic.
It was a little too long.
Yeah. I wrote down how much I loved the way the white Intercontinental title looked. God, that was such an awesome looking belt.
I love that belt.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, what did you guys think of this segment?
My only issue with it was maybe a little too long. If I was like one of our dads back in the day, I'd be like, come on, like, move this along. I'm not paying for this.
Right.
Agreed. I mean, you know, it's Shawn Michaels handing over the belt. I mean, he doesn't even really want to be out there. You can kind of tell. They're playing his music. He's just walking out. He's kind of somber. He's not really playing to the crowd. I don't know. It had to be done, I guess.
I enjoyed Dean Douglas's like actions during that bit. So
yeah, he even said out loud like, "That was easy." I thought that was funny. I mean,
stuff.
I kind of like Shane Douglas, like not really as Dean Douglas, but I do kind of like Shane Douglas in general. But yeah, so right after that, you know, they played Dean Douglas's music again, which I thought was kind of funny. Like, and then Razor comes out, and Razor's gonna face Dean right away for the IC title. Jim Ross tells us that Razor Ramon has the chance to be the first ever 4-time IC champ. Obviously, now the record is probably like 12 or something insane because they toss the titles around so much now. But back then, winning it 4 times was a pretty big deal. Like, for example, Brett had only won it twice. So someone winning it 4 times was a pretty big deal back then. In the beginning of the match, when Razor is, you know, whooping Dean's ass for a while, Jerry Lawler drops in a nice little pun and says that Razor is a pain in the class, which I thought was a good Dean Douglas pun.
If you remember, I think a little while earlier, I think Dean Douglas graded Razor Ramon for one of his matches. I think it was like against Shawn Michaels or something. And he graded him an MF for miserable failure. So I think there's supposed to be like a little rivalry going on right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. I actually like Dean Douglas grading people and stuff. I thought that was funny. Basically, Razor controls most of the match. He gets a choke slam in there. He gets his fall away slam in there. He does his whole like slapping the back of the guy's head spot, which is always kind of funny. He even dumps some water on Dean Douglas at one point. Dean Douglas counters the Razor's Edge at one point and backdrops Ramon to the floor, to the outside. But, you know, it ends in this really weird way where Razor Ramon doesn't even get the Razor's Edge. He just hits like a back suplex. And then he kind of lays his arm over Dean Douglas's chest. And then Dean Douglas clearly gets his leg like under the rope. It's even like hanging out of the ring. Mm-hmm. And the ref doesn't notice and just counts 3 and awards the belt to Ramon. And the announcers even say that his leg is clearly like under the rope out of the ring. But I guess just no one cares about restoring justice for the heels. So I guess the only thing I can imagine is that they did this so that Dean Douglas would have something to kind of complain about. Like, oh, you know, Ramon won, but he didn't really win. You know, he cheated and the referee, you know, cheated me and, you know, I should still be champion. So I demand a rematch, or, you know, that's the only thing I can imagine. But it was a very unsatisfying, very strange finish. I would have much rather have Ramon just Razor's Edge him, you know. Tex, what did you think of this match?
Well, I mean, I like the work for the most part. We got most of Razor's, you know, signature spots in there. We got a choke slam counter. But the finish just seemed like, was that like how they planned it? Was it poorly executed, or was it intentionally done that way to set up an angle like on tomorrow night's Raw or something like that? That's the only thing I could think of. I mean, this is the Intercontinental title, and they're acting like it's no big deal that it was kind of a strange finish there. So I feel like we're definitely going to hear something from Dean Douglas on Raw, and they're probably going to have some sort of stipulation or a rematch or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he'll win the Battle Royal. I don't know. Like, I kind of hope not.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean,
I could see that though.
I could too. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think Douglas is going to be around for very long. It sounds like he leaves early the following year, just because he didn't really get along too well with not only the Click, but it also sounds like he just didn't really get along too well with most people backstage for whatever reason. I actually read a funny little story about how, like, the ECW owner at the time, Todd Gordon, called the WWF and asked what he had to do to get Shane Douglas back, and the WWF just said, "Just go ahead and ask. That's all you have to do. Ask." Like, they were so fed up with Douglas that they were just like, "Whatever, you can have him back." You know, so I guess I do kind of feel like the Click probably had something to do with that. But it sounds like the WWF just wasn't too hot on Shane Douglas in general. But from 1992 to 1995, the IC title went from Michaels to Jannetty to Michaels to Ramon to Diesel to Ramon to Jeff Jarrett to Michaels to Ramon. So, like, over the course over the course of 3 years, we had Jannetty and Jarrett holding it for a little while, but otherwise the Click just held it that entire time, you know. So it does kind of speak towards their politicking and their clout and control they had backstage, you know. And on one hand, I kind of get it. Like, Diesel, Shawn, and Razor were 3 of their clearly biggest guys, you know, and so it's sort of, you know, I don't really agree with them, you know, leveraging that to bury other people, but, you know, I get that they were holding the belt so much. I mean, they were some of your biggest stars, so.
They held quite a few names back, you know, back in the day. I mean, Bam Bam Bigelow was one of them. Shane Douglas is probably another one. They had their way of kind of making sure, you know, Shawn Michaels didn't like working with Vader, who was a international star. So, you know, this is that time period, man. The Clique had a lot of influence.
Yeah, I think Vader is probably the biggest shame, like, because I think Vader really could have been a big deal, and I really like him and his work, and yeah, he's really stiff, and sometimes he hurts someone occasionally, you know, but overall, like, Vader was great. And yeah, like, I even remember the 96 SummerSlam that was in Cleveland, and, like, Vader probably should have won that and, like, won the title, but, you know, I think he lost on a count out or something. But so yeah, after that match, we get our main event, which is the WWF Heavyweight title between Diesel and the British Bulldog. Jim Cornette comes down with the Bulldog, and we also get Bret Hart on commentary for this match, seeing as he's going to face the winner of the match at Survivor Series. I was kind of hoping that we would get Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler at the commentary booth together, because I thought that would be really funny to have their banter and their back and forth. But for kayfabe reasons, they still have a lot of heat between each other. So Bret gets like a few punches in on Lawler and then chases him off down the ramp, and so Lawler's gone for this match, and so it's Jim Ross, Vince McMahon, and Bret doing commentary. We get a quick segment of Doc Hendricks is trying to sell a Two Dudes with Attitudes t-shirt. Then he gets this really strange quick interview with Diesel, and the only thing Diesel says is that he's feeling awfully funky. I thought that was really weird. I just wrote, okay then. Like, what does that mean, you know? It almost struck me like Kevin Nash was unhappy with something in real life. Like, that's almost how it, like, struck me. He was so, like, terse with Doc and just said this really weird line about, like, feeling awfully funky. Like, all right. They mentioned that British Bulldog has the chance to be a Triple Crown winner, since he had already been a tag champ and an Intercontinental champ, and they give Brett some credit and say that Brett's one of the few people with that distinction. Yeah, what did you guys think of this match, and what did you think of Brett on commentary?
Brett's commentary wasn't that good.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a couple times, I think one of his comments was like, yeah, they're both really strong, and we're going to have to see who's stronger.
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed the match for the most part. Like, I enjoyed the fact that, like, the Bulldog had to, like, go at the legs of Diesel and, try and take out his knees. I enjoyed the fact that, like, Cornette got involved. Where I thought things kind of fell apart or got funny were some of the submission moves that Bulldog would put on, either as the screwed up sharpshooter, or like a Boston crab in the corner. Like, the Diesel just reached out his hand and grabbed the rope, and he was selling like this whole like, I can't even like lift my arms because I'm in such pain. And I thought that looked kind of silly. I don't know about you guys. I did not care for the end of the match. I thought it was kind of a cheap way to end a pay-per-view. I would have preferred Bulldog to win than what we ended up having.
Yeah, I thought the work was fine. I liked, again, like Business mentioned, I always like it when you have the psychology in the match and they go over a specific body part that's injured. And with Diesel's knee being injured, then we had JR with his famous insertion of the knee phrase in there, which is, I always find that to be a highlight. I love when he says that. I don't know. But I thought Brett on the commentary actually kind of took away from the match because, yeah, you have Brett on commentary and he brings something different than the King, but the King is like, that's your heel right there. That's your heel announcer. And it just kind of, I don't know. It takes a lot away from it. It really kind of highlighted how much the King really brings to the table. Brett he tried to give the technical insight and all that stuff, but it was kind of flat.
Yeah, I think like that's why I would have loved, like, even if it was a 4-man booth, which would have been pretty crowded, like, I would have loved if Brett and the King were both there for the match. I think that would have made it a lot better, because that would have given Brett a lot more to, like, feed off of, like, because Brett was kind of, like, staying pretty diplomatic and neutral, he was kind of like, oh, I fought both these guys, and they're both really tough, and like da-da-da-da-da-da. I did love when he kind of just like shit all over Bulldog Sharpshooter. I thought that was really funny. Like where he's like, oh, he's got to learn how to put it on right, and then, and he's like, oh yeah, I guess that's putting some kind of pressure on the shin or something, but I don't think that's going to do very much. Or like, he was kind of just like, I thought that was the funniest part. It was a little uncharacteristic for him to like get involved in the match to the extent that he did too. Like, obviously later on, years later, where Brett turns heel, then okay, like, but here where, Bulldog kind of like provokes him and then he just like runs in the ring and like, interferes and gets disqualified and stuff, like, I don't know, that just seemed kind of, a little weak. Like, you might as well have just had Diesel win, like, because you still could have had Brett and Diesel brawling afterwards, but having Diesel not get the win over Bulldog doesn't really do much. There were just so many finishes in the pay-per-view that were, like, so many of them, like, other than Jannetty and Goldust and Fatu and Helmsley, like, everything kind of just had, like, a crappy, weird finish. Like, kind of a fluke roll-up from the Smoking Guns, the weird pin from Razor on Douglas, the double count out with Yoko and Mabel, and then now this disqualification. Like, you really did not have very many, like, definitive, satisfying endings. Yeah, I did like how there was that spot where, like, Diesel fell into the announce table and Brett actually tried to, like, sort of catch him and, like, hold him up, and then Diesel, like, turned around and got in his face. Like, I think that would have been, like, enough to sort of just plant the, like, animosity with Brett and Diesel, like. And then maybe when Diesel powerbombs Bulldog and wins, Brett and Diesel can just sort of stare each other down and be like, all right, it's happening, and like just not have such a big schmaz at the end where like Diesel and Brett are slugging it out, and like all the baby faces like empty out of the locker room and like come down and break it up. Like I think you had like Godwin and Aldo Montoya and like all these all these random ass people were like in the ring like breaking it up. God, this pay-per-view was just rough. Like British Bulldog called Winnipeg a hellhole. I'd say this pay-per-view was a hellhole. I mean, like I was saying before we started, that I felt like even if Taker and Michaels were there and they wrestled as planned, that still would have only given you Taker and Mabel and Michaels and Douglas. And like, I guess the pay-per-view could have been like a 5 out of 10 with those matches, maybe a 6 out of 10 if everything was like really good. But without that, this was like a 3 out of 10 or something. Like, this was like a failing grade. Even compared to In Your House 3 that we talked about briefly one time when we were reviewing Raw. Like, In Your House 3 wasn't very good. It had that weird Owen Hart not being there but then suddenly being there finish, and like, but even that was better than this. Like, I mean,
at least that had Bret Hart versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte.
True. Yeah. This was just kind of throwaway. Like, and if I watched this at the time, I really wouldn't have cared too much to like watch Raw. I guess the 20-man battle royal is kind of an interesting thing. Like, who's going to win that and get to face Razor for the belt. But, Bret Hart was so like off and on at this point that, I don't think that Bret's going to be at Raw, probably. Like, I think the only reason Bret was here is because it was in Canada. He's been kind of off and on, like, filming Lonesome Dove or whatever. Like, so, I mean, yeah, it didn't really push very many feuds. It just goes back to, like, I just think WCW is just doing such a better job right now. I don't know exactly why. It's not like WWF doesn't have anybody. I mean, they are a little dry with talent, and other than it obviously not being the greatest pay-per-view ever, what are your guys' like final thoughts, like overall thoughts on this event from Winnipeg?
I think WCW won by not having a corresponding event from Winnipeg. So.
They won by doing nothing. Yeah.
Well, I guess the good thing is that Survivor Series 95 is pretty good from what I remember. Not to jump ahead, but you do get a classic match out of Survivor Series 95. So, I mean, it does start to look a little better for the WWF. But right now, I mean, this is pretty unwatchable.
Yeah, man. I mean, I had to watch this in 3 sessions. So it
took me 2.
It was an hour and 50 minutes, and I, obviously I could have sat through the whole thing, obviously, but I remember when I got to the Ramon Kid Guns match, when that was over, I was like, all right, that's my first break. Like, and then I think like I got to, maybe like right after Shawn Michaels handed over his belt, and I was like, all right, that's my second break. And like, I just was like, I can't like stick with this all the way through and be any kind of like objective. Like, if I had watched it all in one sitting, I think I would have been even crueler to it than I am right now. The whole time we've been doing this, I feel like the WWF and their Monday Night Raw efforts, it's always kind of just like I'm trying to find silver linings rather than being super excited about it. Like, there's definitely been stuff that I've enjoyed, but I definitely have enjoyed the WCW content a lot more. And I don't think it's just because it's more of a novelty to me. I think it's legitimately a lot better. And I think there will be it's not that I think there will be a turning point where Raw starts to get a lot better and WCW starts to go into disarray. But I don't think that's really going to happen until like 97. Like, 97 is the year that Stone Cold really emerges and Brett turns heel and things start really getting awesome on Raw and on the pay-per-views when all of that happens. But I think until 97, it's going to kind of be a Nitro and WCW show. Any final thoughts, guys, on this In Your House 4? Any last words?
No, sir.
What would you guys grade it out of 10?
Rate it out of 10? I'll give it a 0.4.
Like its buy rate. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
I'll give it a 2 out of 10. How's that?
So my 3 is the most generous. Okay. Yeah. Well, we will be back soon to do the October 23rd episodes of Nitro and Raw, and then after that, we will get to review Halloween Havoc, which is a Sunday away from this pay-per-view. And I think that'll be exciting. I think like getting to do the whole WCW pay-per-view together will be fun, especially that we have the Monster Truck Showdown and Hogan and the Giant facing off in the ring. Yeah, just a lot of like fun stuff. We'll get Diamond Dallas Page too and everything like that. For Big Business and Big Tex, this is Frank Incensed, and thanks for listening to our In Your House 4 report. See you next time.